So today I want to talk to you about how to grow a profitable business offering podcast management services. And this is perfect for you if you're trying to grow a freelance or social media marketing business, or if you're a digital marketer, or if you do consulting. Podcast management services are in high demand because podcasts have become so popular over the past couple of years. And so new podcasts are constantly sprouting up. And so there's a demand to have someone edit these podcasts, audio editing, and then clipping. If it's a video podcast, a lot of people are putting their podcasts on YouTube and then taking those YouTube videos and clipping them for social media. There's a lot of work that has to be done to actually promote a podcast for that podcast to be successful. And the way that podcasts actually make money is a lot of them do sponsorships. Many podcast hosts will sell their products and services through their podcast. Many podcasters also may have another business, right? And so that podcast is there to promote that business for them. So there is a huge micro industry that is there to support podcast hosts. There's a whole industry. There's podcast equipment. There are different tools to help people record their podcasts and edit them. There's a whole sub-industry within the podcast industry. And so today, I want to share with you how to take advantage of that and use that in your business. Let's talk about what types of services you would offer as a podcast manager. Number one is audio editing for the actual podcast itself. So your client is going to record themselves conducting an interview or just talking straight to the microphone for their podcast. Then they will save that audio in some type of sound file. It could be a .wav or it could be a .mp3. They'll send that audio file to you every single week or every month, however they have their schedule. And you're going to take the audio file and you will be editing that using different tools. There are a lot of different podcast editing tools to help you edit the audio, take out mistakes, remove pauses or silent moments within the podcast. A lot of times your clients will talk and then make a mistake because you have to go back and listen to that and then remove those out of the audio, right? So once you have edited the audio, the next step is it's ready to go. Sometimes different podcast hosts may have an introduction audio, like with background music and an introduction. And so you may have to put that at the beginning, and then you may have a different type of outro. So you're going to be joining these different audio clips together to complete the entire episode. So once you have finished completing the audio, the next step is you have to upload that audio to the podcast audio hosting platform. There are different platforms to do this on. You will be uploading that to that server and then it gets distributed. You can also help your client with the podcast show notes. Very successful podcasts will have a blog. So every podcast episode has its own blog post. That will help with SEO, right? So if you have a embedded podcast audio on a blog post, you need to also put show notes so people can find the topics, right? And you'll be using specific types of keywords to attract people to that specific episode. So you as the podcast manager are going to be putting all that stuff together, right? These are a lot of different steps. That's why a lot of people hire podcast managers. It's just too much work. Another thing you want to do is you want to help your client by publishing each episode, having a publishing schedule, creating a content calendar for the podcast itself. That's something that a podcast manager also does. Another service you're going to offer is social media management for that podcast episode. Every single episode needs to be promoted, right? How else are people going to find that podcast? So you can be promoting it on various social media platforms. Now, if your client is doing a podcast that has a video portion to it, typically you're going to help your client upload that to YouTube. You'll take that video and you can clip it for short form content to be distributed on various platforms: YouTube Shorts, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reels. Even LinkedIn allows you to put short form video on it. So these are several different platforms that have to be managed. And so you will be helping to promote those episodes. Again, this is a lot of work. As you can see, I'm just piling on more things. It takes a lot to put together a podcast. Then you want to create graphics for the blog post that the podcast is going to be embedded on. You can also help people launch and create a brand new podcast. So when you do a launch, you're going to be helping your client design the podcast cover art. You know, the little graphic that appears in Spotify or iTunes, right? That's part of the marketing and branding of the podcast. And so you can help your client with setting that up. Another thing you can help your client with is podcast content strategy, helping your clients come up with new ideas and topics analytics for every episode that's supposed to come out. So this is something that you can charge an extra fee for. And when I talk more about pricing, which I will right now, you can break it up into different packages, all right? So let's go into pricing. All right, so the first way you want to price your podcast management service is it could be per episode. So you could just, have it where we charge a specific fee per episode. I have seen prices from $200 up to $400 or $500 per episode. It's really kind of depending on, where you are in the industry and the different services you offer. But I have seen some as low as $150, but I would not recommend you charge that. You definitely want to be at least around $250 to $300 minimum, and you can go up from there per episode. Now, for a podcast to be successful, it needs to be consistent. So I would recommend that you charge a monthly flat fee so you have a package. Every month you charge a specific amount of money and your client will get 4 edited podcasts along with show notes, uploading, scheduling, and promoting it. You could just edit the podcast and deliver it to them and don't do any promotion. You don't do the show notes, but then you charge less money for that. But if you want to charge premium, the best thing is to be a podcast management agency or, have the full podcast management that you deliver every single month. And you can charge anywhere from $1,000 up to $3,000 per month to fully manage a podcast business, really, because that's what you're doing. Now, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to start a brand new podcast, how much do you charge to set it up? You would charge a different fee for the setup part versus the monthly management. You could do that, and I highly recommend you do it because it takes time to set it up, to register the podcast on different platforms. You have to actually set up each podcast for Spotify, for iTunes, for different streaming platforms. So this is why the setup fee is a separate fee to start the project. Then you're going to charge them on a monthly basis to help them with putting those episodes out every single month. So podcast management, like I just explained, is very lucrative. You could be a podcast manager and you do everything yourself, or what I recommend you do is create a podcast management agency. And this is where you hire other freelancers to help you every single month with your client. You may hire a graphic designer to create the podcast art for the episodes or the specific podcast itself. You may want to hire a video editor to help you with creating different video clips if it's a video podcast. You may also decide to outsource the audio editing, or you may decide to hire a content writer to write the social media captions and the notes that go on the blog post, pretty much the show notes. So if you need some help with growing your podcast management service, I actually have a pricing guide for all types of marketers, podcast management, social media management, digital marketing, and freelancers. Make sure you download that guide because it has different pricing for various services that you can offer within your business, and also have additional resources to help you grow a profitable service-based business. So make sure you download it, and also make sure you subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.